26th. Sorry, so this is August 26th, and just ending our special meeting of the Board of Directors of San Diego Community Power that I call to order at 3:30. And General Counsel, did you want to take us out of closed session and make any reports?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's no reportable action from either of the closed sessions.
Perfect. All right. Thank you. So then I'll call to order our regular meeting of the Board of Directors of San Diego Community Power. It's just a little bit after 5 p.m. Welcome everyone. And let's have a roll call.
San Diego representative,
Montgomery Step here.
La Mesa representative,
Bill Baber here.
Imperial Beach representative,
Zadina here.
Chula Vista representative,
Councilman John McCann here.
Encinitas representative.
Joe Mosca present for Encinitas.
We have a quorum.
Perfect. All right. Well, welcome Director McCann as well. And thank you for being with us. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, perfect. Are there any changes to the posted agenda?
No, there are not.
Or do we have any public that would wish to make oral communications with the board?
There were no comments submitted in advance.
All right, do we have any public comment? None? All right. Let's move to the consent calendar. Any changes to the consent calendar? We have 2 items in the consent calendar. The first one is the approval of minutes of the regular Board of Directors meeting on May 27th and June 24th. So we have 2 sets. Second item is modifications to the Community Advisory Committee term end date and work plan approval timeline. Any discussion on this item? I'll entertain a motion if there's no discussion.
Move the consent agenda, Chair. This is Director Montgomery Step.
All right, so we have a motion. Do we have a second? I'll second that motion.
Board Member Baber, how do you vote?
Aye.
Board Member Dedina, how do you vote?
Zadina, aye.
Board Member Montgomery Step, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member McCann, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair Mosca, how do you vote?
Yes.
The motion carries with all directors voting yes.
All right, and we didn't have any, I'm sorry, we didn't have any, Megan, we didn't have any public comment on that item.
No, we did not, and there's no hands raised.
All right, perfect. Thank you. All right, so the next item is item number 3, and that is the election of chair and vice chair for fiscal year 21-22. And I've enjoyed this great privilege of serving as your chair. It really is a privilege and an honor to serve as your chair, and I've had a lot of fun doing this. It's a lot of work, but I've also enjoyed doing it, and would love to put my name forward for another term as your chair, if you'd have me as your chair for another term. And I believe, Councilmember Steve Padilla is not present, I believe he's also interested in serving as vice chair for another term as well.
Well, I would move that Mosca be chair and Padilla be vice chair for another term.
And I will second.
I would second that.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that item?
I'd like to discuss.
All right, perfect.
Yeah, I just wanted to, first, I've said this again and again, but I find this to be an extraordinarily committed group of board members, city agencies, as well as staff. Joe, I just wanted to thank you for your strong leadership on this.
Thank you.
But also technically and issue proficient, or really your ability to really understand these complex issues we're dealing with, not just in developing an agency, but understanding the issue of sustainable energy, which is very complicated. And I think you're the perfect person to be on the board. I appreciate your enthusiasm, your collegiality, and your commitment to work with our stakeholders, our staff, and obviously our board members and our residents and our customers to craft things that actually work best for all. So anyway, just it's a pleasure to work with you.
Thank you, Director Tadina.
Joe, it's Bill. I agree, but I want to make this quick before you change your mind. So let's vote.
All right, any public comment on this item, Megan? Or hands raised?
There's no public comment and no hands raised.
All right, well, let's vote.
Okay, Board Member Baber, how do you vote?
Enthusiastic, yes.
Board Member Dedina, how do you vote?
Adina C, yes.
Board Member Montgomery Steppe, how do you vote?
Very happy to vote yes.
Board Member McCann, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair Mosca, how do you vote?
Yes,
The motion carries with all directors voting yes.
thank you, guys. All right, let's move to item number 4, Operations and Administration Report from the interim Chief Executive Officer. And I think we have a few other people also giving reports. So,
Yes, we
but
do.
I'll turn this over to Bill.
Yes, we do. We're going to pass the baton back and forth as we go through this. I would like to start with something that's really not in the report, but things that have developed that are good for us. I think you're going to be glad to hear the last week or so. And we wanted to first make you feel good before we got into the nitty gritty of the agenda itself. And so I'm going to call on Cody to do that because most of these folks have been working very hard to make these things happen. And they're kind of landmark things, and we want to highlight them for you. So Cody, before we dive in, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, thanks, Bill. And good evening, everybody. Excuse me. So we, as you know, in the startup mode that we're in, we all wear a lot of hats, and we're growing, but we're still taking on a lot more work at the same time and wearing a lot of hats. And so a typical day in the life of somebody that works at SDCP would be, manage your key accounts, make sure our large commercial industrial customers understand the ins and outs of their billing and complex billing and any of the marketing needs. Oh, and also you've been tapped to help figure out retirement for us or some other need that we have as well. And so we've had a couple of big weeks like that. And this week we had a big one. Lee has been tapped with the special projects. And I think Kimberly, on the next slide, there's a picture. Not only has he been working on managing key accounts and really successful, him and his whole team with Lucas and Nelson and others as well, getting bigger accounts to opt up to Power 100, which is really exciting. We'll have a couple of really big announcements around those for you, including the San Diego Airport, which you've already seen opting up to Power 100. And we're really excited about that. Lee also nailed down healthcare for us as an organization, which is no small feat. And also in the same week, he finalized a deal with the San Diego Padres. So we're now advertising with them. And so this is a screenshot of one of the screens at the Padres Stadium. So you can see we're right across the banner, and it comes with a whole package of advertising around putting our name out there. And we're the proud power provider of the San Diego Padres, which is very exciting. It'll be on all the games for the rest of the season. We have a slew of other uses of their logo and a whole marketing deal worked out. So now let's all just hope that they up their game a little bit and play well for the rest of the season. So we just want to take a moment to celebrate that because it's pretty exciting. And again, just really appreciating all of our staff who are all wearing a lot of different hats and working a lot of different deals in and outside of their bailiwick, and all just doing it enthusiastically and being really successful too. So thanks.
I just wanted to comment on that if I can. In
Yeah.
terms of core score or street cred, it's like big thumbs up. Like now you need to go to El Cajon and figure out how to get like an off-road racing company. You know what I'm saying? Like, or
Good
a
idea.
fishing or a hunting, like, the guys that hunt, like,
Mhm.
this is really good stuff. Like your core score is like all time. It's brilliant.
We're all about street cred.
Brilliant,
sir.
brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I was so pleased to see this. It just shows the innovation and the way you guys are thinking, and it's exactly the right way to do marketing. So really smart.
We'll see who wants to sign up for the next partnership. So thank you. Thanks for that.
I also want to just say thank you to the team because, not going into much, but this wasn't a straightforward negotiation. And I think that, you guys saw the value as Director Dedina is saying, and really kind of stayed focused and brought it home for us. So this is a great deal. And as Bill Carnahan said in his email, this is a relationship that will just kind of continue to flourish and produce for us. And so I'm very happy about it too.
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody.
And I will have to say that everyone that I've mentioned it to gets a big smile on their face as soon as you tell them, you know, so it's evidently a perfect fit for us. So I'm glad we were able to kind of sneak in and get that done, and hope to continue it for many years, actually. So we thought we would start off, and in the airport, opting up to 100% is really a big step. I mean, that'll help our marketing. That'll help a lot of things in our portfolio. So we're proud that that happened as well. And again, that came after a lot of work. So we thought you'd like to hear that.
So do they do advertising similar to the Padres, or will it say, you know, power brought to you by SDCP if you're at the airport, or are they planning any kind of, you know, it's part of their climate action goals and stuff. Are they planning any kind of advertisement of the fact that they're 100% and they're through SDCP?
Well, you know, we've actually tried to develop sort of a special relationship with our 100% commercial industrial customers, and so we have this plaque that they can put in their lobby. They can use it in their advertising if they're 100% renewable, and we kind of view them as partners. And as we go along and develop that club, if you will, more, we'll be planning special activities for them and with them, and we look at it as a collaborative process for them to use us as advertising, and we'll give them some kudos on the opposite end, so that it'll help put a little peer pressure perhaps in some cases, but doing the right thing in other cases. And we hope to have a big club of 100%ers. So yeah, that all fits into that. So let me move to just one other mundane kind of subject, but one I hope you noticed and I hope you'll take advantage of. But we have so many acronyms in this business that it's sometimes hard to keep track of it. So you notice we put together a glossary of terms that was in the agenda packet this time, and there's over 100 acronyms in there that relate to our business. And I was surprised when I saw it. I didn't realize there were that many. And so now when you hear us use some jargon, you can actually go back and understand what it stands for and what we're talking about. So that's going to be on the website, and that's also going to be in every agenda packet going forward, so that you'll always have it with you. And I know you're excited about that, but trust me, sooner or later you'll use it. But we're glad to be able to do that. Now, getting back to the agenda itself, I want to talk a little bit about the strategic planning effort. As we all know, with some agony that's been hard to put together. The logistics have overtaken the plan to do it in many cases, and the fact that everybody's busy. COVID came along. We had every obstacle thrown in our way. And we, as the planning group, which was the executive team and the chairman, and Lisa Gordon, the facilitator, we met last week, and finally we're planning to have the meeting in September. And we started talking about how important it was that this meeting be face-to-face, there's just nothing like sitting around and talking about these kinds of issues when you can all be together. And there was some concern that, you know, with COVID, the ebbing and flowing and being uncertain, and looks like we take one step forward and we take a step back, et cetera, that we weren't absolutely sure that we were going to be able to reach that first requirement, which is the in-person meeting in September. So rather than do all this planning and everybody puts it on their schedule and then we're not able to have it, we decided that we actually wanted to postpone it until February or January. The thought being that we originally, when this effort first started over a year ago, we talked at that time about making this an annual effort and making it at about the time we start to look at budgets and other things, so that we could look at our visions and our goals and help us guide where we're going, and then we'll have the budget to match it so that we can pull it off. So I'm actually officially announcing that we are going to postpone and reschedule our strategic planning meeting in January. So you can take that date off your calendar. We appreciate all of you working with us, trying to find dates that worked, and particularly Kimberly was, I'm sure, when you got a call from her, you cringed because you knew we were going to talk about rescheduling or something. And so we appreciate her effort in terms of trying to work it out and make it work yet this fall. I think actually it'll probably be for the best because we'll then be on our regular routine from year to year. So you can take that date off your calendar and we'll give you a new date as we get closer to the first of the year. So that's the first item that I have to report on. And then the second item relates to the county. I'm sure you've seen, and I sent you a copy of the staff report that they sent to the Board of Supervisors. They're going to take action on the 31st, which is this coming Tuesday. We plan to have, well, the chairman is going to either be there or be there in via.
I'll be there in person.
Are you? Okay. We're the meeting, we expect our item will be on around 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock. I don't know how many have looked at that 13-page report, but it wasn't really a definitive recommendation as near as I could tell. The staff sort of looked at the pros and cons in several different areas of the two entities. I think in the table that they outlined many of those comparisons. I think about half of them we were the same, and all but one where we sort of had the leg up in the other one. So I think overall you'd have to give us a bit of a plus in terms of the comparison, but there was no actual recommendation. So we're anxiously looking forward to that. We certainly hope that they choose to become our partner, and we think that makes a lot of sense. And so we'll keep our eye on that as we go along. And thanks to all the staff who helped to prepare information for them that they wanted to use for comparison purposes. And we certainly have open invitation to them up until the time they consider it, that we'll answer any additional questions that they have as well. So we're holding fast until Tuesday, and we will let you know as soon as they make a decision one way or the other. So I don't have any. Joe, do you have anything to add to that in terms of?
I was just going to say, I mean, I looked at the analysis and I mean, I was hopeful that they, in that analysis, that they would actually recommend, the staff would recommend us. You know, I looked at their little matrix, the matrix that was put together. I think I would probably have in their conclusion have said SDCP, concluded that SDCP was a solid fit on several of those items, including RA, where I thought they were like, well, you know, because of the ups and downs of procuring RA. Well, this is a tie or maybe a move toward CEA, but it doesn't understand the fact that the size that we are, you know, and the fact that we're kind of in a cul-de-sac in San Diego, that it was difficult to do that. But you know, being that the county is nearly 2,000 gigawatts, they'll have the same issue when they go into the marketplace. And so we're experienced in dealing with that. And so I thought that was a actual plus. But I've expressed that I'm excited about the county kind of looking at joining us, and you know, and I think that it would be a great fit. And you know, while we've been at this for a couple of years now, and some of us even longer, and kind of thinking about how we're going to start this journey, my message to them is that this is still the ground level. There's still a lot of things that we need to tackle, a lot of policies that they can be a part of, policies in terms of social justice, equity, and community benefits. What are community benefits? They can be on the ground level and really defining these policies. So I think it not only is this a good fit, but I think it's the right time. You know, it's the right time for them to come in and be a part of this, and we would welcome them, and they would basically be a part of the process of building SDCP. So I'm excited to be there next week and to kind of deliver that message as well.
Any other questions or comments anyone has? Okay, we also.
I'm sorry, Bill, and Chair,
Right.
there is a hand raised.
Okay.
Let's see. Megan, did you let him in already?
Matthew Vassilaskis, I've unmuted you, so you should be able to talk.
Thank you. Perfect timing. Thank you, Bill. Good evening, Mayor, good evening, directors. This is Matthew Vasilakis from Climate Action Campaign, just dialing in to urge the board and staff to continue to engage with the County Board of Supervisors and their staff to ensure that they make the right decision and join STCP next Wednesday. Based on our analysis of the county staff report, we don't believe it fully reflects STCP's many benefits and strengths. And we hope the board and staff will continue to reach out to the supervisors in the coming days to make the pitch for STCP or even dial into next week's board meeting and give public comment and support. Please know that the community has your back in this effort. This week, we submitted a coalition letter with IBW 569, Grid Alternatives, San Diego 350, and others urging the county to join STCP this calendar year. Thank you for all the work that staff and the board have put into this effort, and know that CAC will continue to be partners with you in other initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Bill, did you want to continue with your report?
Yes, and thank you, Matthew. That's very helpful. Yeah, let's move now. It's noted, it kind of gets lost in some of the enthusiasm over the county, but we also have a couple of other cities who have actually submitted their requests for us to do studies like we did with the county as they consider requesting membership as well. And so we actually have 3 that are looking right now, and I'll turn that over to Cody in terms of the timing and some of the issues related to the new memberships. Cody.
Thank you, Bill. And thank you, Matthew, too, for that. The support of the advocates is really helpful to us, and we really appreciate all of your support. If you can go to the next slide, please. I think there's a table. Oops, there we go. So we have a few other cities that are also, as Bill mentioned, submitted data to us and are asking us to do the same type of analysis that the county did. So far we have National City also looking, which would be great because they're right in between. A few of our current members, and also the city of Oceanside is doing the same analysis and working with us. So I think you all recall from the pressure we had when we formed to get everything done by the end of the year. We're experiencing the same kind of time crunch. There's a state requirement for us to make all these decisions, update our what's called an implementation plan that we submit to the state, and get all that done by the end of the year in order to serve the customers of any new member 1 year later at the earliest, so by 2023. So working backwards from that timeline, we've kind of laid out the steps here that you can see, both for the county, since they're already on a different track, and for any other cities interested. And so the time to submit data to us, that window is quickly closing here. It needs to be done this month in order for us to complete those analyses and present that information back to you all, our board, and so that they could take it to their own city councils as well. And both parties will have to make a decision on whether it's a good fit. And then if that is the case, and especially if the case for the county next week, then the next steps will be for your board to approve by a 2/3 vote a resolution authorizing that new member, the county or whoever else, to join us and join via membership. And then they have to go to their city councils or their board and take the same action of actually adopting our implementation plan as is. And if they haven't done so, adopting a community choice aggregation or CCA ordinance. And as you know, those take some planning because they take 2 readings and then several weeks in between. So you don't have to know all the details here, but just note there's quite a few steps and not a ton of time. So we'll be coming back to you next month with the results of the analysis for National City and Oceanside. Also, depending on how the county vote goes and if they choose to join us, which they hope they will, and see all of our values alignment with them, that they will we'll be presenting that information to you as well for action. And then we'll be preparing an implementation plan, which comes back to you again for approval and submittal all by the end of the year. So just if you're having any discussions or you're out and about in the community, just know that this is our timeline, and we've shared this with folks and happy to talk further with anybody that's interested.
Cody, so how do we take the temperature of this board at some point in the process? Like, so you have X city that comes and says, we're interested in joining the JPA. At what point do we take that to the board to kind of decide whether the board has that there's some desire to kind of move in that direction?
Yeah, so a couple of things. That's a great question. So we brought a new member policy to the board in order just to give us a process for how to do that, which you all adopted, I believe, in our last meeting, which was in June. And then when we do that analysis, we present those findings to this board and have that discussion then of, here's what it looks like financially and operationally, but then also you get to weigh in from a policy standpoint if that seems like a good fit before we move forward.
Any questions? Go ahead.
That's after we have PEA look at the economic analysis, and then you have the discussion, of you take that into account in your consideration of do you want to approve or not approve that particular additional member. So that's really the time the board gets to debate it, but it's after they have the information. That's really the key there.
We had the whole discussion and refresh my memory. I remember we had that Director Baber had mentioned. I remember his comments about the cost on certain cities, and there was kind of a back and forth about what cities could afford. So what did we land on in terms of, X city kind of decides that they want to move forward. They want to start the process with us, and we're starting that analysis. That analysis is going to cost us money. So do we decide that we wouldn't charge the cities any money for that initial? But it would be then embedded if they came with us, or
what we decided was we talked to our consultant and figured out what a not to exceed cost would be, and that's about $30,000 currently. If a member city decides to join us, then we would waive those costs. But if they say, hey, can you run our data, and decide it's not for them, then we would recoup the actual cost, not the $30,000, but what the actual cost was from them. There was a clause adopted in the policy that allows your board to waive that if they're a small city, or if you just have some other reason why you would waive that, and we'd be happy to work with you if that becomes the case. But if they join us, then they don't have to pay at all anyway. So it's a moot issue at that point.
all right, perfect.
Okay, I think you're going to move on to the next item, Cody.
Right, yeah. So one other, completely switching topics, we also have a new office space. So we, everything changing all the time, every day with the world we live in now, we decided to get some short-term rental space just to have a place for the local staff to go when they need somewhere to work outside of their homes for whatever reason, whether it be avoiding children or dogs. I'm sorry about that. We have office space in Monaco Commons, which is in Liberty Station. We have about 8 offices, 8 desks there with the opportunity to expand as we need. And we're just testing it out and kind of being flexible with the nature of the world right now and giving that a shot. And we're having a lot of positive feedback from our staff so far that they're really enjoying being able to get together when they need to in person and do some collaboration. So we're pretty excited to just have a real place to be sometimes.
Cody, if I had to meet with someone on an SDCP issue, would I call you and say, hey, can I meet at the space, or is it open all the time? How does it work?
Yeah, we have, there's 2 conference rooms there that we're welcome to use, and you can call us and we'll book it for you. And there's beer and kefir soda on top, so and coffee, also coffee. So we're happy to provide that for you and provide you a space to meet.
Thanks.
And this space is particularly attractive also in that those are short-term lease. We have a lot of flexibility of moving offices around. These are not elaborate. They're pretty Spartan. Some of them have 3 or 4 people in one space, one office. But right now, flexibility is a key word that we don't want to overcommit and then have to carry that financial burden, particularly with the virus ebbing and flowing and changing. And so we started off with as you say, I think, was it 8 offices or 12 offices? And as we add staff throughout the year, we can add spaces, office spaces for them. But
Maybe we can set up a time for if any board members are interested in coming down and taking a tour of the space. Maybe we can set something like that up.
yeah, we could
So
even
that-
have maybe a little open house or something like that if we can find a time that people can get out and around and you all can come over and see it.
That sounds great.
I want to carry, anything else on that, Cody? Okay, so along with that, with people coming back into the workforce, we are transitioning, as virtually everybody is, from a remote working environment to either back to the way it was before or some combination thereof, which I guess the new way of thinking about it is a flexible work schedule. So we are starting to work with that as well, to look at various combinations of how often and when should folks be in the office, and when is it more efficient and for them to be working remotely vis-a-vis from home. And we have tried to I actually tried to codify it to begin with and did a lot of research on what people were doing that were coming back into the workforce. And then, of course, the latest negative news from COVID, that it's coming back in a different form, perhaps, it's kind of thrown all those plans up in the air, which really cries for the fact that it should be flexible. And so we're at allowing folks to start working pretty much their own schedules, letting us know and making sure the supervisor is okay with that. And then also perhaps picking days where we want folks there in the office. For example, we're thinking that sometimes before a board meeting, the few days before a board meeting get pretty hectic, where we're putting things together and talking about this and that maybe those are days we'd like to have at least a core of the people there, or staff meetings. Maybe when we have our staff meetings, we ought to have everybody there. Those are still under development, but to let you know that we perhaps will be changing it as we go along, and we'll be observing what other CCAs are doing, what turns out to be best practices maybe. We'll look at what you all are doing in your own cities, see how you're dealing with that kind of a situation. And then we'll keep modifying it, letting it grow. And it may take several months before we actually get into a groove of what we really want to do. So just to let you know that's how we're really trying to adapt and deal with the changing work environment, both in terms of office space and in terms of the people occupying those offices. So we'll keep you posted on what we're finding out, what the preferences seem to be, what works, what doesn't work, until we kind of get in a groove here, and then we'll settle on a firm policy at that point. So just to let you know, we've been thinking about it and working on it. So that's all. Anyone have any questions about that, about the policy?
So Bill, are we gonna have, is this a policy that, this is a policy that will come before the board at some point for us to discuss?
Yeah,
Right.
like I say, right now we're flexible and we want to find out what we think works for us, and then we'll come back and make sure that fits with what your views are, and then we would adopt it permanently. But I didn't want to do that now because it's really going to be changing and growing, and wanted to wait till we kind of figured out what worked the best, and we would recommend that to you all.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And Director Tadina, did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, just for on that, did you, maybe I missed it, did you mention what the vaccination policy is for staff?
We actually don't have one at the moment.
I would strongly, I know our city is going to announce that. I know Encinitas has. I would strongly urge you to. I would hope we can be leaders in that. I think it would be irresponsible not to be.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree.
All right.
Especially coming from the city that is moving in that direction.
I'd like to move that. Hopefully the next meeting, we can put that on the agenda.
Okay, we'll do.
All right. Thank you for bringing that up as well, Director.
Thank you. I think that completes Cody and I's part of the report. We'll move on to power resources, and that would be. Let's see, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, Phil, I would just say on that policy too, for the flexible office remote policy. I'm looking forward to that coming back, but I agree with you in terms of you know, I mean, especially right now, as we're growing and perhaps there's going to be different space, you know, down the line that than we have right now. And so I think kind of being flexible with our staff and allowing more teleworking especially in the beginning, and maybe even, you know, as we're maturing, there's going to be, you know, just really solid teleworking policy. But I think especially in the beginning, as we only have so many office spaces and we're kind of growing into this space, we should have a very healthy kind of policy about being able to work from home. You know, and I just think, like, as we get kind of you know, even more mature as an organization or past COVID, you know, it's just it seems to be where a lot of San Diego companies are heading to, teleworking.
Yes. Great. All right. This is I don't think this is your slide, is it, Byron? Are you gonna?
No, I don't have slides for the O&A report.
Oh,
That's
okay.
just,
All right.
I'm going to speak to that. So Kimberly, you can go back to the last slide if you want. Thanks.
There was a step here, so.
Yeah. So, and I'll try to keep my section here quick for you all as well, but feel free to slow me down or double click on me, so to speak, if you want to go into any additional detail. I want to start first of all with it's I think we missed one meeting, and in the 2 months since we've last spoken, we've tripled my team in size. So we brought on two folks recently. It's amazing to me they haven't been to a board meeting yet. So I want to introduce to you Carlos Gomes and Ian Williams. They're both on the call here. Excited to have them on board. Carlos comes from Sonoma Clean Power and Ian from Silicon Valley Clean Energy. Both of them have a ton of experience in the energy industry as well, from before their previous CCA roles as well. So really excited to have them on board. We got a lot of work to do, a lot of power to buy, a lot of RA to buy, a lot going on in these areas. So it's just great to have them. We'll probably keep growing the team here a little bit as well in the near future, but for now, going from 1 to 3, from 2 hands to 6 hands has been incredible. So you'll be hearing a lot from them in the future, as well as in a lot of these board meetings and in a lot of other settings. So want to introduce them and then give you guys just a few quick updates here, just in general on the power resources side. First of all, wanted to check in on the market, kind of give a quick market update, so to speak. I know we're all aware there were rolling blackouts last year. There were crazy price spikes and a lot of discussion and activity kind of ever since about what we're going to do, about how we're going to solve that problem and how we're going to prevent that this summer. So we've been involved with the CPUC, the California ISO, the CEC. Bill, it's a good time for the acronym sheet as we start listing these agencies. But we've been working with them. The governor's office, right, has been involved in a lot of policy as well. So kind of all hands on deck. Maybe not as efficiently as some of us would like all the time, but there's been a lot going on, a lot of movement there. So we've been working with all those new orders and kind of complying, but with that, doing our part. In addition, it's also been so far, I'm going to knock on wood here a number of times, not jinx us, but it's been a relatively mild summer, relatively calm summer so far as well. So we've seen temperatures relatively stable. We've seen a few isolated heat waves here and there. I know the Northwest, had Portland hit 114 at one point, right? We've seen a little heat in the desert, and we've got climate change all around us in the drought and the wildfires for sure, but we haven't seen what typically drives these just huge crippling heat waves or price spikes and volatility in the market is just coincident heat across all of the Western US. We haven't seen that yet. And here we are most of the way through August. So it's been relatively calm, and a lot of the kind of fear that people saw in the market hasn't come to fruition yet. So just wanted to update you there. We've been preparing, we've been monitoring, and so far it's been, we've been carrying our umbrella and there hasn't been any rain. So that's always a good outcome. But we still got our umbrella out for another month or so, just in case, and we'll be monitoring. We're not out of the woods by any means, but so far it's been relatively calm. So just wanted to provide that update, and happy to take questions now or offline as you all have them.
Questions or comments for Byron? Byron, thank you, and welcome, Carlos and Ian. We're very happy to have you on board and have you part of the team, and look forward to your reports in the future. And Byron, thank you for your presentation. So in terms of market prices, it was last year that we started seeing the prices spike because of all the occurrences last year. So, and those prices continue to stay high. And so are we seeing the same kind of trajectory, or are they coming down?
It's a real mixed bag. We so far kind of through the calm summer, we haven't seen market prices in the spot market hit what they did last year because there hasn't been quite the volatility. But in the forward markets, we've seen the same high prices, because there's kind of a fear factor, so to speak, baked into it. There's kind of a volatility, uncertainty, and everyone's kind of pricing in potential for a heat wave. But in some ways, it feels binary, right? If there is a heat wave, a big heat event, then we're going to see prices, take off. If not, then they'll stay pretty calm. And so everyone's got to kind of, do their planning, risk adjust their planning one way or the other. And so obviously, a lot of people still want to hedge and still want to make sure they have sufficient supply, as we all should. But it turns out then, when you've got a calm summer with not too much heat, then things settle out kind of below the forward prices.
All right. Thank you. Any questions for Byron? Any comments? All right. I guess it's time to move on to Lucas's report.
Thank you, Chair Mosca. Good evening, directors. As far as what we've been working on, we are happy to let the board know that we were able to work collaboratively with SDG&E to actually create our first joint rate mailer. Kimberly, if you don't mind going to the next slide, please. The joint rate mailer is actually an annual CPUC requirement that essentially captures the comparison between the IOU and the CCA pricing for specific schedules, as well as the power content label. So for this joint rate mailer, we are capturing our board approved rates as of June 1st, 2021, coinciding with the beginning of our phase 2. Likewise for SDG&E. SDG&E did actually have a June 1st rate change, and this is what you are seeing in this slide. These JRMs or joint rate mailers are actually at the post office as of this evening, and customers should start seeing them in their mailboxes no later than early next week. So very happy with the outcome there. Obviously, our value proposition is still holding, as you can see, anywhere between 0.5% across the total bill, anywhere to about 7.5%. Just wondering if there are any questions or comments on the JRM or joint rate mailer.
So what's the percentage differential now with their between the Eco Choice and the SDCP Power 100?
That amounts to over, I think, 7%. And again, I mean, this is one of the selling points as far as customers who are looking to opt up to our Power 100. They do, obviously, I mean, SDG&E puts customers who want to opt up to Eco Choice on a waiting plan, whereas for us, we do not have a waiting list. We can actually adequately serve these customers, obviously at the 100% renewable content and relatively lower cost than SDG&E's Eco Choice.
Perfect.
If I could add one other thing we need to draw your attention to is if you look at the table on the right there and you look at the renewable percentage, that's the amount of their energy mix on average is 31.3%, and ours is 51.7%. So our product is a much more desirable product, and yet the prices are very competitive, but we have a much superior product that we're delivering. And you can also note that the breakdown, they have 24% is gas in their standard mix, and ours is of course 0. So it's a much better product. So anytime someone wants to do a rate comparison, make sure you remind them of the quality difference in the product too.
Absolutely. Thanks, Bill. And just to add to that, so we are going to be posting this joint rate mailer on our website as well, effective as of close of business tomorrow. And then obviously customers will be getting the pre-sort standard mailers in their mailbox no later than Saturday. Next slide, please. Moving over to the dashboard. So we're also happy to let the board know that staff has begun scoping creation of real-time dashboards that will capture key metrics such as opt actions, opt-ups, opt-outs, our revenues, our cash receipts, our account receivables, etc. This just gives you a quick high-level snippet of what these dashboards will be able to capture. So here we're actually capturing all of our opt-outs by month. And then if going over to the next slide, you should be able to see that we're also able to capture the opt actions based on each member city. As you can see, May was slightly a rough month in terms of the opt-outs. And the reason why that is, based on the feedback that we got from our contact center, is the fact that customers had received their second pre-enrollment notice. And for whatever reason, they thought that they had to opt out before phase 2 actually commenced in June. And so in May, we did see a significant spike in opt-outs, but as you can see, it has been relatively flat or relatively quiet in the subsequent months. So June has been relatively good, likewise for July and August. And typically with most CCA launches, what you're seeing here follows the expected trajectory of opt-outs, generally speaking. Customers tend to opt out right before the beginning of the phase, and then thereafter, after they get their first round of bills. And so most of these phase 2 customers should have received their first bill already. And as you can see, the opt-outs have relatively tapered off, and we're keeping a close eye on this. Obviously, reaching out to all of the bulk of our key accounts and other accounts through our contact center, just checking to see if they have any questions with regards to their bills, not that their accounts have switched over. If they want us to run bill comparisons for them, we're able to do that. And so far, I think we've been successful in keeping the opt-outs relatively low. As you can see on the right-hand chart, our participation rates based on account counts is actually relatively good. We are, for phase 1 and 2, we're at 98.37. And then in terms of the load, we are at 97.34% participation rate, which in the grand scheme of things, that is a relatively really, really good number. And the goal here for all of us is to maintain the opt-outs at closer to lower than 5%, hopefully. But again, we are doing what we can do in terms of engagement, outreach, and messaging to customers, participating in various roundtable discussions with all of our CNI customers, and answering any questions that they might have, and everything in our power to make sure that customers are comfortable with who we are, what we're doing, and the alignment of our mission relative to their mission. I'll stop here.
Lucas, I have a question. But I think you alluded to this. So for those that have opted out, and since we're kind of only talking about commercial and industrial customers and quasi municipal and municipal customers, but we're not talking about residential. So are we actively kind of are we actively reaching out to them to if we think that there's some misunderstanding or anything like that? I mean, are we using some of our account representatives to reach out to them and talk to them about the benefits of SDCP?
Absolutely, Chair Mosca. So yes, we have reached out to a number of customers who have opted out. First, to just check to see the reasons for their opt-outs, and then trying to have a discussion in bringing SDCP to them as far as who we are, our value proposition, the benefits that they get by being on our service, obviously a superior product that's relatively cheaper than the IOU, right, in terms of our energy content mix, and quite honestly, the white glove service that our team is able to provide to them. We have been able, in some cases, we've been able to actually get customers to opt back in. That's not always the case, though. There's specific customers who are, who perhaps prefer SDG&E, maybe because they do have a long-standing relationship, perhaps, even though they recognize that yes, there is value in our service, they're more comfortable staying with what they know. And for those customers, we're still keeping our lines of communication open, reaching back to them periodically to see, if their energy needs have changed, and finding ways in which we can either be a resource or a partner in even getting their feedback as far as our program's development. Some of these customers did opt out because of specific programs that we currently do not have, but we are actually looking to stand up. And so, keeping those lines of communication open so that when those programs become live, these customers can opt back into our service.
It's great that we're kind of thinking like that and thinking of what we can do to kind of bring them back on, and that we'll address that proactively. Lucas, do you think that there's anything, can we extrapolate from our experience here and kind of really think about how that can be applied in the third phase, or is this kind of a bit different than the third phase? Just because this is just, as you say, in residential customers, it's going to be so many more, and it's going to be quite different. So are there learning lessons here that we're going to basically apply to in the third phase?
Absolutely. We've actually we've done an internal lessons learned session already. Just taking stock of what we did well in phase 1 and 2, and definitely some of the things that we can definitely do better. Especially given the vast majority of accounts that we will be phasing in starting in February of 2022. And speaking of that, Kimberly, you might go to the next slide. That actually would address some of the questions that you have, Chair Mosca. So for phase 3 planning, we've already initiated discussions internally, and these are our areas of focus that we're definitely looking into. The first and the biggest one being our NEM accounts. Obviously, we do have close to 93,000 NEM accounts as part of our phase 3 launch, starting in February. And obviously, in adherence to the enrollment schedule that the board approved in April, we have to figure out a mechanism of phasing these accounts that essentially does not disrupt their true up from the transmission and delivery perspective. So these are some of the things that we're talking through internally, and our goal here is to have all of these planning areas mapped out no later than the middle of next month, and we will definitely be providing an update to the board on where we are as far as our road mapping goes. We're also going to initiate a conversation with SDG&E on September 16th, just doing a lessons learned recap of everything that happened that was great as part of phase 1 and 2, things that we can all collectively improve on. There are a few nuances, especially with the transition to the new billing platform, that we can do better for phase 3 to ensure that the residential rollout is successful.
Excellent. Yeah, no, and this is probably another benefit of the fact that we have multiple phases, because we can learn from what we've done before and apply that to the next phase. So that's awesome. And even as we go into phase 3, we have 3 phases for the launch of residential customers as well. And by the way, the NEM stuff, I get it may just be my city, but I get a ton of questions from NEM customers, and it's always confusing. And so I think we do have to sort that out and message appropriately, because I don't think people understand, the bill impacts and when your true up period is, and okay, you can, if you're in Encinitas, you can, launch, you can come with us by April, or you're eligible to be with us by April, but you can't come with us until you're trued up, or something like that. And I'm probably even wrong on that. So I think we need a lot more education or messaging around that.
Absolutely, Chair Mosca. And yes, that is definitely top of our priority list. And we will definitely be providing an update during the September board meeting on where our efforts are pertinent to messaging, because you're absolutely right. The NEM phasing absolutely has to be perfect so that customers are not inconvenienced by us triggering any unintended premature true-ups.
Any other questions for Lucas?
I was actually going to add one other additional thing. We've also been working on a dedicated NEM website that is going to have all the information to our NEM customers on when they can expect to get rolled over to our service, what they should be expecting, etc. And we do expect to launch that webpage no later than September.
Yeah, that is something we get a lot of questions on. I'm sorry. So Lucas, did you have more to your presentation?
No, Chair Mosca, I think this actually wraps it up. So unless there are any questions, this was the update that I have.
Awesome. Thank you, Lucas. Any questions or comments for Lucas? Or for anyone that just presented on item number 4? Megan, do we have any public comment on item number 4?
We have no public comments and there's no hands raised at this time.
Awesome. All right. So this is a receive and file. If there's nothing else as to item 4, I'm going to move to item number 5, which is appointment of Eric Washington, Chief Financial Officer, as Treasurer. And this is Ryan. I'm sorry. Bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, members of the Board of Directors. Ryan Barron, General Counsel. Tonight's item 5 is the appointment of Mr. Eric Washington, your Chief Financial Officer, as Treasurer, which is required by the Joint Powers sections. I'm going to turn it over to Nick Norvell, our Assistant General Counsel, to give you a brief staff report. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and board members. Nick Norvell, Assistant General Counsel. As Ryan mentioned, the Joint Exercise of Powers Act and the Joint Powers Agreement requires the appointment of a treasurer to perform the duties of both treasurer and auditor for SDCP. Under the JPA agreement, the board can appoint any qualified person the law allows to serve as the treasurer, and that includes SDCP employees. The JPA agreement also provides that the board will designate certain officers who have charge of SDCP's property to file a bond in an amount set by the board. As you know, earlier this year, and as Ryan mentioned, SDCP hired Eric Washington as its Chief Financial Officer, but it has not yet formally appointed a treasurer. The proposed resolution would formally appoint Mr. Washington as the treasurer, and it would also require him to execute a surety bond and issued by a reputable company for the benefit of SDCP. And it provides that SDCP will pay or reimburse Mr. Washington for the premium of the bond, which is generally a small percentage of the total bond amount. For the amount of the bond, it's currently blank in the resolution, but we'd recommend either a $50,000 bond or a $100,000 bond, as those amounts appear to be the typical range for other agencies in the region, including some of the member agencies whose bond amounts we were able to locate. So our recommendation this evening is for the board to adopt Resolution 2021-3 to appoint the Chief Financial Officer as the treasurer, with the maker of the motion specifying the bond amount, $50,000, $100,000, or such other amount as is desired by the board.
I'll make the motion with the bond amount being 100.
Do we have a second on that motion?
I'll second, Chair.
All right, we have a second from Director Montgomery Stepp. Just out of curiosity, Nicholas, do you know where the Clean Power Alliance up in Los Angeles is at in terms of their bond, and maybe even bigger than that?
I tried to locate it on any of their publicly available documents. I looked through their board agendas and I was not able to find any agenda or minutes reflecting how they set the bond or what their decision was on that matter.
Are there any comparable CCs that you could, I'm just wondering if 100,000 is too low?
Not that I could Not that I could locate. The agencies I was able to identify were 3 of them member agencies. 2 of them were set at $100,000. 1 of them was set at $50,000, and then 2 others are set by resolution, and I wasn't able to find the specific amounts for those. Generally, a $100,000 was the largest example I could find on record. But I don't have records of how other CCEs, if they have set bond amounts, what those amounts were set at.
All right. Do we have any questions? We have a motion on the floor on a second. Do we have any questions on that motion? Do we have Megan or Kimberly? Do we have any public comment on this item?
There's no public comment and no hands raised.
All right, perfect. Let's vote.
Okay, Board Member Baber, how do you vote?
Aye.
Board Member Dedina, how do you vote?
Aye.
Board Member Montgomery Steppe, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member McCann, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair Mosca, how do you vote?
Yes.
Motion carries with all directors voting yes.
All right, so we're on to item number 6, which is update on regulatory and legislative affairs, and this is Laura Fernandez. Yes, Laura, you get to present. You haven't done this in a month or so.
I'm glad that you're so excited and not ready to fall asleep.
I love regulatory updates.
Me too. All right, let's dive in. This is my little roadmap here of the items that I am planning to cover today. Next slide, please. So as a reminder, SB 612 is the only bill that SDCP took a position on this legislative session. This bill is the one that's sponsored by Cal CCA, and it would have ensured fair and equal access to the benefits of legacy resources for all customers. At our last board meeting, I reported that it was set for hearing on June 30th, which it was, but at the very last minute, it was pulled from the agenda by Chris Holden, which was very unfortunate given the amount of support that the bill had received. Since the bill did not receive a hearing in committee, it is now a 2-year bill, and the 2-year bill status means that no action can be taken on the bill until January of next year. But usually bills in the second house won't be heard or set for another hearing until the following summer, like June or July. So disappointing outcome on SB 612 for this legislative session, but it's not dead for good. We'll see what the next year brings. Next slide, please. So this is something that I have not talked about before. This is a new update, but last month we worked with other CCAs to send a letter to our congressional delegation. We have somewhat more of a favorable climate in Washington, D.C. now than we have the previous 4 years. And so, we got the idea to start doing a little bit of advocacy there. And so we worked with other CCAs in putting together this letter that outlined some ideas. We advocated for clean energy investments and specifically requested that CCAs be eligible for forthcoming opportunities for federal funding to support clean energy investments. We also had a productive meeting about this letter with DC-based staff for Congressman Scott Peters. And you may have heard that after months and months of negotiations, the Senate actually passed a bipartisan infrastructure package on August 10th. And if we could go to the next slide, please. Here is a breakdown of some of the clean energy investments that are in this bipartisan package. And it's not a done deal just yet, but it's likely that this bill will be passed and it will be signed by the president. And so also on August 10th, that same day, a coalition of members in the House, including Scott Peters, signed a letter advocating for clean energy tax credits and equitable EV infrastructure investments to be included. And these were all items that we discussed in the letter that we sent along with other CCAs. Next slide, please. So sorry, go ahead.
Laura, on that point, are we in terms of those line items on the last agenda, last slide, can you bring that last slide back? So the storage, so are there any good fits for us? I mean, storage, is there any way that we can participate in some of these demonstration projects or?
So that's something that we're working on right now. So we've sent this letter to our congressional delegation. We've gotten some good feedback. We actually heard from Nancy Pelosi's office about, she was asking the different types of projects that CCAs are working on or planning and trying to get us included for some of these opportunities. So we are not done yet. It's all kind of still unfolding. It's something we are still working on, but that would be the hope that we might become eligible for some of the money that's included in this bipartisan infrastructure package.
Laura, is energy storage batteries or other things that go into that category?
I think it's not just batteries, but potentially other things.
Especially if it's demonstration. I mean, it could be some new innovative storage that they're looking at beyond lithium-ion batteries.
Yeah, and so something else we've been discussing within CalCC, our trade association, is the need for a federal lobbyist, because dynamics in Washington, D.C. are very complicated, and we were fortunate to get a meeting with Scott Peters' staff, but figuring out all these different bills and how they come together in a bipartisan infrastructure package, and there's going to be a reconciliation bill, and it's totally different than how things work at the state level. And so I think that as we're seeing these kinds of opportunities come up, we realize that we probably need some help at the federal level in terms of a potential lobbyist. So that's something that CalCCA is working on right now, is looking to get a lobbyist at the federal level for CCAs to help us get access to some of these potentially huge amounts of money to do some potentially really awesome things.
That's a good idea. So yeah.
Any other questions on either of the first two legislative items, SB 612 or the federal infrastructure package, before I move on?
So how much would we advocate for stuff that would actually be within the IOU's kind of wheelhouse? Like, what I'm thinking is, like, you know, some of these transmission upgrades or hardening of the system reliability, which would flow to SDG&E, but in that same regard, it would basically lessen, when you look at the rest of the bill, it would lessen the upward pressure on that bill, and in theory allow more capacity for us, right?
I'm not totally sure if I understand your question, but I can share that, you know, one of the asks that we got was, you know, what would CCAs like to do? You know, if we're going to push at the federal level, then what is it that we'd like to do? And a lot of what Northern California CCAs are doing are resiliency type projects. So there's microgrid projects. Redwood Coast Energy Authority, for example, partnered with PG&E as well as an airport up there to set up a microgrid project. So Redwood Coast provides the generation for that. They work with PG&E, who obviously does the transmission and distribution up there. And it was sort of like a model project. And so those are the kinds of projects that we responded to this request about, you know, if CCAs were able to get money, what would they do with it? And resiliency is a topic of that is a priority.
I can add a little bit to that too. I think I understood your question. There's a whole lot of advocacy happening at the national level on these topics. So transmission was already a pretty set and done deal, but what we were able to do is kind of reverse that and say, but please also consider what CCAs can do, because they weren't really initially considered. So I think we got more additions put in rather than trying to put downer pressure on some areas in order to increase what we can get. So it feels like a win from that perspective for us.
All right. Director Tadina?
You know, this is great news. I don't think we should underestimate the impact this will have on the market and, you know, our sector. The sector, I think, just like the kind of first iteration during the Obama administration, how that helped change the landscape for making solar more accessible. I think this is going to be a game changer, and, you know, really, really important for legitimizing, just supporting what we're doing and CCAs in general. But I think this is going to be a game changer. And obviously, the most significant investment in clean energy in global history, right? Like, nothing's been done like this, unless maybe I'm thinking China. But anyways, and hopefully this is the first start, right? Climate change isn't going away. The need for this stuff isn't going away. So, you know, the more that we support this kind of thing and help facilitate it, and right, resiliency, the battery storage, et cetera, the better we off to continue this cycle, right, of further investments. So it's great.
Laura, do we have anybody from California who is on any of the key committees that are dealing with energy or appropriations?
So Scott Peters actually is on, I forget the exact title, but it's like a subcommittee for climate change and energy. I don't know if Cody, do you remember the exact name of that subcommittee? I could look it up.
No, but he's been definitely aware of us reaching out to ask for our opinions on things. So I don't know the exact title either, but he's been a great connection for us. Really helpful. And CleanTech San Diego has been helping us as well make those connections. And I've known Scott for a while from some work at the board. So he's been a great advocate in listening to us and helping. And Laura has too, across the state, getting the CCAs to weigh in and be a force for once.
Okay, good. Well, Scott's a good man.
Yeah, and so we actually sent this letter to our entire delegation. And, I was pleased to get a response from his staff, because sometimes you send these letters out and you just think they go under the ether and nobody sees them and nobody reads them. But his staff actually responded and said, have you talked to committee about this? Let's set up a meeting. And so that was really great and really positive, and sort of, reinforce what we're all talking about here is like, oh, there might be some real opportunity at the federal level. I think we've all been kind of living in this, our California bubble for the last 4 years and just doing things here. But it's nice to know that there are people in DC who now care about climate change and energy issues the way that we all do.
Should also reach out to my Congress member, Mike Levin, who represents the southern portion of Orange County and the northern portions of San Diego. He's very focused on climate, and he, I think, together with Congressman Peters, had the president's White House person on climate, the kind of climate czar in the White House. I know there's somebody over, I think John Kerry's over the state, but she's over at White House, and she was here, I think, actually at SDG&E last week, and they were doing some tours. So certainly I would reach out to Congressman Levin.
Yeah, we did send a letter to his staff, but maybe I don't have the right contact. But if you know of any good contacts that work for our congressional delegation, I'd love their emails, because they're a little bit hard to track down. But I did look up that Scott Peters, he sits on the House Committee on Energy and Commerce and the Energy, Environment, and Climate Change Subcommittee, which is where one of the bills that was related to this infrastructure package
Well,
was.
that's a good location for Scott.
Mm-hmm. Anything else on this before we move on? Cool. Next slide, please. So the net energy metering 3.0 proceeding has been really active over the past couple of months. After opening and reply testimony were filed, there were multiple weeks of evidentiary hearings at the end of July and early August. Those have now concluded. Unfortunately, because settlement discussions are confidential under CPUC Rule 12.6, I can't share a whole lot at this time, but I do expect to be able to share more about this proceeding and how it has progressed at the next board meeting, since by the time the next board meeting rolls around, the proceeding will be submitted, which means that opening briefs will have been filed, reply briefs will have been filed, and then it will be set for a CPUC proposed decision, which we expect by the end of December. Any questions on this one?
Will you have any kind of, so when you come back to us in September, you'll have any kind of recommended action if there is any need for us to kind of activate?
I do expect to have a recommended action for you at the next meeting.
All right, awesome.
Any other questions? Okay, next slide,
Do you,
please.
can you say without can you say publicly, like, where is it going? Is it prospectively, or is it going to retroactively apply, or were, any kind of thoughts on what you think is any predictions on what's gonna happen?
I do have predictions, but those are based on confidential settlement discussions. And so I don't feel comfortable sharing those predictions because it'd be based on confidential information.
All right, perfect. Not perfect, but I understand.
I wish I could share more. Thank you for understanding. All right, this is the last item that I have. So you might recall that last year the sales forecast did not reflect departing load until the very last minute. It was a really big problem. This was sort of right as I was coming on to SDCP. You might also recall that earlier this year, I updated you all in a previous board meeting that we are heading for a similar outcome this year, because the rate reductions that were filed in the ERA application did not incorporate the 2022 sales forecast into the calculation for bundled rates. But with the help of our robust legal team, we've been pushing very hard and pushing every button possible at the CPUC to avoid a last minute issue like we experienced last year. We've been meeting informally with CPUC staff. We pushed on every lever we possibly could. The CPUC was getting very tired of hearing from us. We had ex parte meetings, and they were like, yes, we hear you, we get it. It's going to be a problem that, the sales forecast is old and stale and rates are going to be wrong. Like, we get it. And we were like, do you get it? And then finally we got a ruling from the administrative law judge, which directed SDG&E to prepare a quote modified 2021 sales forecast, which is supposed to be adjusted solely to reflect SDG&E's current best estimate of likely departing load next year, which is largely us. So that means that the forecast sales numbers used to establish rates for next year would account for SDCP departing load. And so we're like, yay, victory, you know, like not a perfect solution because it won't necessarily be the final exact perfect sales forecast that, you know, will get approved probably after January next year. But it was, you know, it was going to be close enough. And nothing has changed just yet, but I will share that SDG&E filed its sales forecast application on August 13th. And since then, SDG&E has made an informal request to use the sale forecast from this separate proceeding in the error proceeding, which would basically put us kind of back to square one. So we've been advocating to avoid this outcome. So the point is that this saga is not over yet. As it stands right now, we have this ruling from the judge in the error proceeding saying that SDG&E needs to, you know, project SDCP or just to project departing load for next year and use that in ERA. SDG&E, you know, I won't speculate as to their motivations, but they, you know, it seems that they do not want to do that. They would rather just use their separate sales forecast. So we're going to keep working hard to ensure that the outcomes in the error proceeding reflect accurate rates for not just CCA customers, but all customers. And the way that rates are going to be the most accurate is if we have some kind of close estimate that reflects the number of customers that SDG&E will be serving next year versus, you know, the customers that SDCP will be serving as we take departing load. So that is my ERA update. I know that was a lot. Are there any questions on that?
Any questions or comments for Laura? Are you done with your presentation, Laura?
That's it. That's all I have for this meeting.
See, that wasn't that bad. I thought it was pretty good. So you make regulatory and legislative really good. All right. If there's no other comments, Megan or Kimberly, did we have any public comments on it?
There's no public comments and no hands raised at this time.
All right, so this is a receive and file, so we'll do that. Item number 7 is EEI agreement confirmation between SDG&E and SDCP for purchase of long-term renewable energy. And I believe, Byron, this is your item.
That's right. You guys couldn't get rid of me just yet. Back here to close us out. I never ran track, but you guys can call me the anchor. This might be my one time in life. Anyway, so yeah, item 7 here, and it's talk about a big week for SDCP forming partnerships with established organizations in the San Diego area. You know, got a deal with the airport. We got this deal with SDG&E. Nobody told me that Lee got to negotiate with the Padres. I got stuck with SDG&E instead, but here we are. So I'll walk through this in a minute, but we've been working on this for a while and have a purchase and sale agreement now for purchase from SDG&E for some of their legacy renewable energy on a long-term contract. So next slide, please, Kimberly. Thanks. So I apologize in advance. There's a lot of text here. We'll try to walk through it, and I'll try to keep it brief. It's in some ways a kind of a complex deal as well. So I promise we'll get through some of this background, and it'll make sense in the end why we're kind of covering all this. But high level, we've been over the long-term renewable requirements in the past. So those are, I think, just refresher. That we need to have a certain number of, a certain volume of renewable energy every year. It needs to be renewable, and a certain percentage of that needs to be secured under long-term contract. That's, I think we've covered that before, and as we've talked about, we've signed already 3 long-term PPAs for renewable energy. So 65% of that starting this year has to be of our renewable energy need to be long-term contracts. And this is measured in compliance periods. So the first one that we have to comply with, obviously, is the current one, compliance period 4, which is 2021 through 2024. There's no, and we've talked about this, I think, in the past as well, there's no real grace period for a new organization standing up. If we sign a deal today for new build renewable energy, it's not going to be online for 2 or 3 years. So we're kind of in this period where we've got to comply, where 65% of our renewable energy this year needs to be secured under long-term renewable contracts, but those resources can't be online at the earliest until 2023, likely 2024 for anything we sign right now. So that's again kind of the regulatory framework, and then wanted to lay a couple other kind of foundation stones here as well, talking about the allocation of legacy contracts or legacy resources from SDG&E to SDCP. So we've talked before about the PCIA. I think again that's probably on Bill's acronym list as well on our anyway, power charge and different adjustment. We've covered that in plenty of depth before, but just a reminder that anything that SDG&E procured on behalf of our customers, there's a charge that's kind of passed through, right? The above market portion is passed through to us. And so we and our customers are on the hook for that. And to kind of alleviate that and kind of pursue equity, I guess, or a more equitable outcome. Laura talked earlier about SB 612, which it seems like it's going to be held now to be a 2-year bill. So that would have been kind of one option to allocate the resources that come with the PCIA or that are associated with the charge a little more fairly. Instead, there's kind of a half measure right now when compared to SB 612 at the PUC. And again, sorry, Laura, to steal your thunder and and maybe I'll just make you look good in comparison by giving my regulatory update, which is nowhere near as good. But currently the PUC, there's a VAMO process, voluntary allocation and market offer process, which is basically it's in the works right now, but it looks like it'll be an allocation process in a lot of ways similar to SB 612, but it's only for renewable energy. It doesn't include kind of the energy and the resource adequacy portions that SB 612 likely would have included instead. So that's kind of the background I think necessary to dive into this topic. Again, I'll keep moving, but feel free to chime in or any questions or clarifications as we go. Kimberly, next slide, please. So background here again as well for SDCP, where we are in our contracting process. I think we're all aware we've signed 3 long-term PPAs already through the RFO from last summer. In addition to that, we've been in discussions with SDG&E for a while now. They had an RFP last summer that we participated in. I think there was a little bit of back and forth and then probably I think a couple false starts with them, but we've ended up kind of in bilateral negotiations now pursuant to conversations that started last summer. I think right before I joined, so in January, I think your board authorized SDCP to enter into an EEI master agreement, an enabling agreement with SDG&E, foreseeing this transaction for long-term renewable energy. And basically since then, we've been working on this confirm. It's been quite a process. We'll get to the details in a minute, but it's a pretty complex deal. And again, in this dynamic regulatory environment, not only is it pretty complex on the commercial side, but in the regulatory environment, we're trying to foresee and I guess enable some changes on the regulatory side that are forthcoming. So trying to contract around uncertainties has made it an interesting and complex process. But anyway, here we are. So next slide, please. So high level, the objectives kind of heading into this contract are to secure long-term renewable energy supply, especially upfront in 2021 through 2024, to make sure we comply with SB 350 and those compliance period 4 requirements. So again, we plan to have a steady supply of new build renewable resources coming online starting in 2023, those that we have contracted now, and then others following on behind those. We'll be out in the market again before long and signing deals pretty continuously for a while. Those will be online before long, but in the meantime, we've still got this main compliance obligation to have long-term contracts and deliveries from long-term contracts in 21, 22, 23, and 24. So that's the main driver here. Some of the other benefits, obviously, as well here, anything we buy from SDG&E comes out of their PCIA eligible portfolio. So should be a more equitable transition of resources, but also costs from SDG&E to our customers. The complex parts of this transaction as well is that we're aware of this allocation process working its way through the PUC right now. We don't have clarity on it. It's likely to be to begin in 2023, but it's still they're still in the drafting process and the workshop process. So we're not really sure exactly what it's going to look like, but we're trying to craft a document that will allow us to, for the first couple of years, buy kind of bilaterally from SDG&E, but then after that part, starting in 23, then use this as a vehicle to transact those allocation process to allocate through this transaction, so that they're all kind of bundled within this one long-term contract. Finally, as well, just want to note it. We certainly want to go out and buy long-term renewable energy, and this will take care of a portion of our needs, for at least 10 years, like about 12 years. But we don't want to restrict ourselves from any future procurement for new build incremental resources, right? That's one of our core functions here, is to increase renewable energy, reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the grid. And so that's been in our mind as well. We want to make sure we get sufficient renewable energy supply for the first couple 3 years, but without, but without restricting ourselves, without over procuring ourselves in the out years, so that we are unable to keep signing these deals, that we expect to have online beginning the next couple of years. Next slide, please. So the high level summary here, again, it's attached. If you want to get into the nitty gritty, it's attached to the board packet. There's a staff report as well, but high level is we're going to be buying for about 12 years from SDG&E, from 24 of their wind facilities. These are the 24 contracts they have that are in their PCIA eligible portfolio for long-term deliveries that they're buying from the market, or from suppliers and developers. They purchased these, they entered into these before SDCP customers, left their service, so they're still on the hook, so to speak, and in the PCIA eligible portfolio. So as you can see, there are 24 of them. They're all wind and solar, and most of them are in California, and even the majority of them, vast majority, are still in San Diego County and Imperial counties. Excuse me, I've got a little bit of a hoarse throat. So we're hoping to review this deal with you all this evening, and then SDG&E is reviewing it with their risk review committee next week. And so we're hoping to execute it shortly thereafter, which hopefully will allow us to start deliveries as soon as November 1st, potentially. It will be subject to PUC approval, and so the CPUC could take a little longer, but the sooner we get it reviewed and signed and on its way to the PUC, then the sooner we can get approval and start deliveries.
Byron, does this change our profile that Lucas had showed us earlier?
Sorry, which profile was that?
The profile of what we're purchasing for our customers.
Oh, sorry, the renewable energy profile.
Yeah.
This will be incorporated in that. I think we're kind of, as this deal isn't, I don't want to share too much strategy. As the deal isn't signed yet, we are, trying to leave room in the portfolio, so to speak, for this.
But it's similar to what we're purchasing now. So it's not, would it shift? All right, because I see wind and solar, but we're not purchasing anything that's not already in our portfolio.
Right, we're not
purchasing anything that's going to change the profile of what the energy load is that we already are showing.
Correct. So because we were, again, a few months ago, we were hoping to get more deliveries in 2021 and get this done sooner, because it's been so complex. We're hoping to have some deliveries start in the last couple of months of the year, but we'll start significant deliveries in 2022. So that will be consistent with our our planning, right, to be at least 50% renewable and wind and solar mainly, and exclusively in this deal. And so that'll be kind of consistent with the rest of our portfolio, for these 12 years. Right. And then and on top of which we'll layer additional contracts as well.
Okay.
So the complexity in some ways here, again, 12 years, we're likely to just run through 2033, which is the end of compliance period 7. I think having been around the renewable energy world and compliance period for a while, it's been, I think this is the first time I've had to talk about compliance period 7, planning out to 2030, 31 through 33. But this contract will run out that long. The complexity here is in the contract quantity. And so I mentioned earlier, there's this allocation process. So we have fixed quantities in the contract for 2021 and for 2022. So, just firm fixed volumes that they'll deliver. And even kind of, stipulate that if the PUC approval is delayed in 2021, that we'll receive those in 2022 instead. What happens though in 2023, assuming VAMO and this new allocation process takes over, we will just the quantities basically in this contract will be set by that VAMO allocation process. So, so that's all yet to be determined. Well, we're likely going through that next spring, summer, where, there will be an opportunity for us to review kind of the SDG&E portfolio that's, available to us. We'll be able to select a certain percentage of it over these long-term contracts to receive, and then that will flow. Ideally, this is the idea, the main point of this the confirmation is to have those volumes and flow through this deal as one transaction. So the first is kind of a hybrid deal. First couple of years are fixed volumes, but look with an eye to this future allocation process, and then that will set the volumes for 2023 and beyond. The couple of other points here: renewable energy price is indexed to market prices, so that's consistent conceptually with what we're seeing shape up here in this allocation process as well. So we're not going to be setting a fixed price and then subject to kind of mark to market. Winning or losing against the market one way or the other, it really will be subject to index prices and consistent with the market. And then there are no credit or collateral obligations as well for SDCP. So again, another favorable term for us. So I think that's the summary. Again, I'm happy to take questions. Some things I realize are redacted, and some things that may not be able to speak to it as we're still in negotiations. But I'm happy to take any questions. Yes, Director Baber.
So Byron, don't answer this if you feel it's going to compromise negotiations, but I can see why we're doing this. What does SDG&E get out of this? Why are they dealing with this? Couldn't they sell this at a higher price to someplace else?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I can't speculate a whole lot to be honest. I think in the interest of in some ways being good partners here, working with us and kind of complying with and following the intent of the program here, right? Which is to have these renewable energy volumes that were purchased on behalf of our customers kind of follow with their customers to us. My guess is they don't mind reducing their length, but they've got a whole lot more renewable energy than they need as well. I think they probably don't mind selling it off as well. Sorry, Bill, did you have a—
Bill, do you have a better answer
well?
to that, Bill?
Well, I was just going to say that the logic here is the arguments that we have made is that our customers pay the PCIA, which realistically takes the generation that's been abandoned, our folks and others, down to market, and then they can sell it at market. And what we've argued, but they weren't selling to us. So our argument was for certain of the resources that we want, if we buy it down to market, then we ought to be first in line to try to buy it, because our customers made it competitive again. And so this whole backdrop is the fact that it's not hurting SDG&E because it's a stranded cost anyway. And they have to sell it into the market, and we need it, and so we might as well get it as a part of the two utilities working together. It makes a much more efficient system. So that's really the backdrop here.
That's noble, but that would imply that SDG&E is doing something egalitarian and beneficial to the community. Is that what you're implying they're doing?
No, they did not volunteer to do this, and it's taken several months to get here. That's an appropriate answer.
Okay. I'm sure they're making some money somewhere, but okay, I'll live with that.
Yeah, so Bill Carnahan, just kind of picking up on what you said, because on slide 28, if you can go back to slide 28, just trying to understand this. I mean, of course, because we're in this cul-de-sac and there's not as much generation down here in San Diego region, that SDG&E obviously has energy that we would love to purchase, and but we're purchasing it at market rate. And so I'm just trying to understand this reduced quantity of renewable energy supply in SDG&E's PCIA eligible portfolio. I mean, our PCIA doesn't change, in sync with what you were just saying. I mean, it's just, if we're buying at market or somebody else is buying at market, there's still the differential between the market and what they paid for generation that our ratepayers, our customers, our residents are still going to pay for, right?
Yeah.
Or is all right.
Yeah,
So
Byron's probably a better one to answer this, but what this does is make, in the past, they have not offered these resources to us, as I recall. So this allows us resources that we couldn't otherwise get that help fill our need, which goes beyond what we're getting here. And so we actually are anxious to get some of these resources to start to fill the gaps in our resource mix. And it's a way to get access to them that at least I think it's fair to us. And that we were able to identify the resources that have been idled by us, and our customers are paying for that idling. And so it just seems appropriate that we be allowed to bring those resources into our mix. I don't know if
Yeah, I mean, I could see the benefit for us because, right, like if we're not in a resource rich area and we're going into the market, we either can't find it or we're paying higher rate for it, and they're holding on to it. And so not only are we then paying a higher rate, but then we're paying the PCIA. But I was trying to understand, like, reduced quantity of renewable energy supply. Like, does that mean like that there's some benefit to them to reducing, like, is there if they don't reduce it, is there some impact on our PCIA?
And I can speak that a little. It's not, the conversation is correct so far, right? And that if they can, so as long as they're selling at market, right, it's the above market cost that really is the difference. I think, it's kind of maybe a second order effect potentially, or maybe more indirect. But to the extent they have so much above market or so much length or so much supply that them selling it reduces the market price, I think that could have an impact. Or to the extent they can't find buyers for it. And so they've got to mark it down to $0, and then the whole thing becomes above market. There are those kind of potential impacts. If it's 1 megawatt hour for 1 megawatt hour and the market price doesn't move, then I think it was spot on. I think the potential here is if there's enough supply here that it moves the market, then there could be potential impacts.
And I think the other key factor here to me is that these are existing resources. They're not to be built in the future. And what we're trying to do, as I think Byron mentioned before, is we need some of this short-term stuff, because we can't wait. We can't do an RFP and it's tied up right now. And so by loosening it up and making us, which we think we're entitled to it, making it available to us, it makes it easier for us to fill our basket, if I could put it in.
But to Byron's point, Byron, your point is like the more they're holding on to, the more they have influence on our PCIA. It could be positive, it could be negative, but we're hedging our bet here by purchasing it from them at market rate. Got it.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll add to it, again, I don't want to try to speculate about SDG&E as well, but and again, not to be an IOU apologist, full disclosure, I worked at one for a while, but it was years ago. They have actually been I know we've seen, not always seen eye to eye with SDG&E based on different departments and in different venues, and I fully agree with kind of Laura and some of the frustrations in the regulatory side. I will say, I think we have established through this process, it's been a long one, a good working relationship on the commercial side as well. So we've got, I don't know that the organization as a whole necessarily, from top to bottom are fully in lockstep, but I think we have, established a good rapport with them in some areas as well. So they've worked with us, to this extent. To the previous question about, their benefits from this as well. My guess is, there's risk politically to them if we were to make all the cases that you've all stated, that Bill and directors that you've mentioned, and to say, hey, we're paying it down to market anyway, and you're not going to sell to us, right? You're not going to give it a good faith effort. My guess is that they'd probably receive a little bit of criticism around the political arena as well. So my guess is this is probably, their opportunity to work with us and show good faith and hopefully, hopefully reduce that risk.
Now we finally get to the nub of it. Okay. I know it took us a while, Byron, but we got
there. Yeah, there you go. Again, just speculation.
It's as plausible as anything else, right? Yeah. I mean, the only other answer is they can't sell it to anybody else and they're dumping it on us, right?
No, that's not true.
That probably not true. No, I think you're probably right, and good for them. Good for them to recognize the political wins. Good,
Well,
I appreciate that. And
No,
if you're
we-
out there
we-
from
we-
SDG&E and you're listening, call me and tell me what's going on.
We definitely want this, and we've been negotiating and working with SDG&E for a while. So happy that this deal has come together. Bill Carnahan.
One more quick thing. I think that Byron is sort of not getting full credit for the fact that we're trying to thread the needle here a little bit. And that is because there is the PUC effort going on, which really is the same concept that is being worked on here pretty much. And so what Brian is trying to do is we can't wait for the PUC process, although I think we believe it's coming, which will do sort of the same thing we're doing here. But he wants to do it now because his biggest problem is in the short term. Is that a fair statement, Byron?
Yeah, that's right, Bill. It's really a matter of being able to marry. It's been, again, complex, but being able to marry the short-term purchases with this long-term allocation. Yeah.
So it's pretty novel and kind of unique, and that's why it's taken a while. But
all right.
Now that we're
Byron, do you have any other comments on this? Any other details that you want to present on this item?
No, I think that's it from me. But again, happy to take any additional questions.
All right. Does this solve it? Does this help us with any of our other regulatory requirements? I know that we were still in the market for some RA.
Not directly. This is largely, the renewable energy. Yeah, I will say again, not to be too friendly here and too optimistic about negotiations with SDG&E, but I think we've mentioned in passing that this could lead to additional purchases from them and other resources as well. So whether it's RA or other things, so we've kind of hopefully greased the skids. I wouldn't expect anything from us next week on that front, but I think this is hopefully lay a groundwork here and be a pattern we can repeat with them as we'll be in this position of them having resources they procure on behalf of our customers and hoping to sell to us equitably going forward.
Right. We just have to quiet Director Baber down before he scares everybody off.
I might call him into negotiations.
All right. Any questions for Byron? Any public comment on this item, Megan or Kimberly?
There's no public comment and no hands raised.
All right. So if no other questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion on item 7.
Motion to approve.
Second. Do we have a second for this motion? I'll make a second. So we have a motion, a second.
Okay, Board Member Baber, how do you vote?
Aye.
Board Member Dedina, how do you vote?
Dedina, aye.
Board Member Montgomery Steppe, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member McCann, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair Mosca, how do you vote?
Yes.
Motion carries with all directors voting yes.
Excellent, Byron. Thank you. And great deal.
Yeah, thank you all as well.
And feel free to use Bill Baber. He's a great negotiator. He's excellent.
I'll call him. We'll call him a closer. Thank you.
Yeah, Joe, if at the regulatory hearing, they show up and go, we don't need this regulation. Look, we negotiate our own deals, so let's not have any regulation. Then you're buying me lunch, okay?
All right. He's making your job harder now, Byron. Let's mute him. All right. So we're at the bottom of our agenda, and we're at the item of director comments. Any besides Director Baber, anybody else have anything to say? Director McCann.
Yeah, I would just say first, it's great to fill in. I really enjoy being on the board here. I would just Councilmember Padilla, his dad is very ill and sick, so he wasn't able to attend. And I just wish that you'll give him some prayers, his dad some prayers, and feel free to text Steve to give him some encouragement. It's a very tough time with his dad being that sick. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that as well. Any other director comments? All right. Reports from Bill Carnahan, our interim CEO, or from General Counsel?
I have nothing.
Nothing to
Ryan?
report, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
All right, we are at the end of our agenda. Our next meeting is September 23rd, Thursday, September 23rd. See you guys then. Have a nice evening. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Tune into the
Bye.
county on Tuesday.
Bye,
Oh,
thank
see
you.
ya. Yep. Watch the county.